More on this, we're joined by Oliver Farry from our International Affairs Desk. Oliver, so we were just hearing there from Shona that there are critics of President Erdogan. What did the critics have to say about him?
Well, there's a lot of anger at to the perceived slowness of his response, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan himself admitted this the other day when he visited the epicenter of the quake, Kahramanmaraş, on Wednesday. He said that it could have been better, but it's many of the areas affected are actually struggling to get aid quick enough. And to be fair, it is an exceptionally large area for a quake that of course straddles two countries as well. Erdogan has not particularly contrite either. Speaking to local residents, he said he blamed the whole thing on fate. He said, what happens, happens. This is part of fate's plan. Now, Erdogan has been also criticised for letting party politics come in the way of his response. He failed to contact mayors of cities run by opposition parties, and Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who's the leader of the opposition Republican People's Party, was scathing, saying that if any one person is responsible for this, it is Erdogan. Turkey has also come under criticism for blocking Twitter for several hours earlier this week, and NGOs say that the social messaging service was actually a very useful tool for rescue workers to locate people who were trapped under the rubble. Turkey says that Twitter was being used to relay fake news and misinformation. Now, it's certainly true there has been some of that about the earthquake in recent days that has been posted, but it's unclear to what extent that might have hampered the rescue effort, or whether it warranted blocking access at all. One thing that Erdogan has done, in contrast to a previous government in 1999 during the Izmit earthquake, is to accept international help. So quite a lot of international rescue workers have gone through. Turkey is doing a lot better in that respect than neighbouring Syria, which of course is hampered by war and the fact that the country is fractured into government-run and rebel-run zones.
Well, this is one of the most seismically active regions in the world, but not much seems to have been done to make these buildings safe, as we just heard there from our correspondent. Why is that?
Yeah, the Turkish authorities say 6,500 buildings are completely destroyed. 40% of the buildings in Kahramanmaraş have been flattened. And as Shona said there, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, when he came to office 20 years ago, did institute a building code that is supposed to make buildings earthquake-proof. However, the reality is these regulations are not always strictly enforced. Much of Turkey's economic growth over the past 2 decades has been driven by construction, and developers, as in most countries, are very close to the centre of power. A lot of the time, they skirt or blithely ignore the building codes, and with few consequences. In the aftermath of Monday's quake, a Turkish journalist posted on Twitter an advert for a relatively new apartment building that was filmed collapsing, and the advert for the building, which the journalist said was just a year old, said it was up to code, which it clearly proved not to be. It was seen on film collapsing. Many of these buildings are not properly reinforced, and it leads to what engineers call pancaking when an earthquake hits. This is a similar effect to what happened in the Sichuan earthquake in China in 2008, when so-called tofu buildings, so named because they're shoddily built, contributed greatly to the death toll.
Well, meanwhile, Erdogan is facing re-election. What will the long-term fallout be for him?
Well, the opposition, as we've seen, they're trying to make as much of it as they can. Erdogan has gone on the offensive, saying that the critics are provocateurs, but there's a sense of popular anger, as we can see in an article by the Turkish writer Ece Temelkuran. She says that the rage at the government is greater than the pain. Now, Erdogan has brought these elections forward this year, and they're expected to take place in May. Whether that will happen now is probably up in the air as of yet. Now, this could potentially be the worst possible timing for him. He himself came to power, as Shona said, 20 years ago next month, after popular anger at the previous government for its bungling response to the 1999 earthquake. But Turkey is also battling runaway inflation at the moment, which has already got the electorate's shackles up. One thing that might help Erdogan is the 3-month state of emergency that the government has imposed in the affected regions. Now, this is to combat profiteering in the months following the quake, but it may also be useful for controlling the message and potentially affecting the campaign. And of course, Turkey, since the 2015 attempted coup d'etat, has very much clamped down on the free press and sent a lot of journalists to prison, and it is definitely not the same doesn't have the same free media environment that prevailed after the 1999 quake. Erdogan has accused those of criticising him of trying to politicise the tragedy, but as is often the case in natural disasters where the death tolls could be alleviated by better planning, the earthquake this week is, whether he likes it or not, intrinsically political.
Okay, Oliver Farry from our International Affairs desk. Thanks so much for your insight, Oliver.